Traffic signals help vehicles move safely and efficiently, but traditional signals follow fixed timing, even when traffic changes. This can lead to delay and driver frustration. What is adaptive signal control, and how does it work? Today's traffic signals use detectors, such as sensors in the pavement, cameras, or radar, to know when vehicles are waiting. Most signals use this information to follow a fixed schedule that changes by time of day, but does not continuously adapt to on-the-ground traffic conditions. Adaptive traffic signal control builds on this by using real-time data from multiple intersections. Detectors track where traffic is moving smoothly and where backups are forming, and share this information between signals. Instead of relying on a preset schedule, the system automatically changes signal timing based on current traffic conditions to better understand how traffic moves through the network. How can adaptive signals benefit the city? When deployed in appropriate corridors, adaptive signals can reduce delays, smooth traffic flow, make travel times more reliable, and reduce the number of stops and time idling. This improves safety and the driver's experience, reduces greenhouse gases, and makes better use of existing transportation infrastructure. Great, but what's the catch? Adaptive signals are not a cure-all. They can't prevent congestion caused by crashes, construction, or too many vehicles for the road's capacity. Adaptive signals adjust timing and optimize existing infrastructure, but they can't create new roadway capacity for an overloaded system. For adaptive control to deliver value, the city also needs up-to-date detectors, supporting infrastructure, a strong communications network, and trained staff to monitor and maintain the system. This investment is part of making the technology work for the community. What's the bottom line? Adaptive signal control is a smart tool that can help manage traffic more efficiently by responding to real-time conditions. However, it works best only under the right circumstances. Adaptive signals cannot fix congestion caused by an overloaded roadway system. They require upfront investment in detectors, communications, and supporting infrastructure, as well as ongoing operating and maintenance resources to continue delivering benefits. What's next? The next step is a study to identify which system improvements make the most sense, what investments would be required to implement and maintain them, and which options offer the greatest value. Adaptive signal control can be the cherry on top of a modern signal system, but it is not a one-size-fits-all solution and may not always align with the city's priorities. For that reason, implementation costs and benefits should be evaluated on a corridor-by-corridor basis. This balanced approach helps ensure that future decisions are informed, strategic, and align with the city's broader transportation goals.
arterial. I see that a lot of, that sunset between 90 and front is really a disaster. And I would be interested in seeing if that can help. But also, I guess I really thought about the doesn't help if there's too much traffic for the roads, which I think is there might, in my lived experience, that doesn't feel like only a traffic signal problem.
It's Victoria. Julie?
I think, my main experience, at least over the past year or so, has been bus. We either Issaquah Transit Center or I drive to Mercer Island, Park Ride, and take the bus from there. So it's usually either of the two. But when it comes to the bus on 900, I do think it would be important to have transit priority there, where the bus engines start, particularly when it's approaching the transit center. So that's pretty important from my experience, I think. Well, but that like, I mean, quality of experience was just traveling, throughout that region. Yeah, because I've been thinking about more transit center now, exactly. So
It's true. I also ride through this corridor. I don't remember what this road that goes right past this. This man,
That's our 900.
That's our 900. Yeah, or 17. I never remember road names. But SR 900 is no very memorable name. I don't know. Anyway, this roadway I think is the one that I personally think, just from thinking about it, like the traffic lights on this corridor are kind of the biggest problem. And like people were saying on Front Street and Sunset, yes, there's a lot of traffic there, but that's typically because there's 10,000 cars. Like, it's not because the traffic lights are slowing things down, but here there's like 10 traffic lights in a row and down from here in the 90s. Or like when you're going to Lake Smash State Park, there's like literally a set of like 4 or 5 like traffic light, and it is very possible to just get stuck at every single light and make taking like what should be a 10-minute trip take 20 minutes or something, right? So that's where I see there being like the biggest need for that sort of thing. Because that's the place where I get most annoyed by the traffic lights, I guess.
It's good to know.
So
Are you taking detailed questions as well? Because I'm having trouble with the kind of the higher level point because I don't know whether it's a capacity problem or whether signal. I just never studied it in that way, so I can't say. But I can tell you that there's a couple of places where the signals are not working well, and one of them is the intersection of Front Street and Dogwood at Rainier. And if you're on Dogwood and you're trying to go left on Front Street, you either have to jump out of the car and hit the pedestrian light, and I know that in the TIP, this is like a future project to redo that whole thing, because I don't understand why we can't have a sensor for the cars coming on from Dogwood Street, because it's really, really, really problematic.
That is a pedestrian signal today.
It's only a pedestrian signal.
Yeah.
And so, all kinds of creative things to get out of there. And I don't know if that's adaptive or what, because I don't know enough about what the boundaries are of this discussion. Another thing that is, I don't know if this could work, but I love a scramble, and I love our scramble as the 3 trails crossing. But I find myself at that intersection on foot, on bike, and in a car pretty regularly. When I'm in a car, it seems really, really, really long. And then if I'm running, it seems like it's way longer than it needs to be. And if I'm biking, it's way longer than it needs to be. But if I'm on crutches, like it was last spring, then it's just the right amount of time. Is there any way for these sensors to, because there's not that much, it's not like, a huge scramble. There's not that much use each signal. Is there any way to adapt it based on the users, because you can have, I mean, it's like 25 or 30 seconds, and someone can be across 5 seconds and sitting there for
Yeah.
5 more seconds, so.
So the. I can take all my time on this, but the way that we time signals for pedestrians is that we have a set speed that we assume a pedestrian can walk, which is based basically on somebody being crosses. And that is the minimum that our manuals, our guidelines, our best practices allow us to time for a pedestrian movement. So if there's a pedestrian call, which at an intersection with a ped scramble, we're going to serve that every single time we go through a cycle. We are always going to serve that minimum. There's technology that can detect a pedestrian who's having trouble in the crosswalk and extend that walk longer and to give them time to clear. But it's not necessarily going to be able to go lower than that. And specifically at the scramble, you have to time it based on the longest distance somebody has to cross, which is going to be the diagonal, right? So it does, ped scrambles do have a longer phase. Sometimes they're actually better for the operations though, because you're getting all the movements at once, rather than having to have usually the longest crossing across the major street, going with the smallest volumes, which is the side street volumes that go through, because nobody usually goes through there only wanting to turn on. So they're only way for pedestrians anyway. So you end up with this weird timing that's really based on
So
like,
the answer is, it's not really on the table, because you have to set the minimum.
I
Can't really do.
my note is that we love a ped scramble. I think that's great. And then wanting to be able to have more input on maybe not always going to mass like recall or something. Yeah.
And then, final one is just that it seems like, Front and Sunset is so right for the scramble, and I don't know if that's also in some adaptive, consider if that's a fair piece
It's on
of this conversation.
It is, it's on
Because
us,
it seems very adaptive to me, and it seems like it would really help to put there, but I just.
Julie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had just a, more fundamental question about, the balance. You brought up the point about the balance of this discussion of, when we're looking at some of the arterial corridors at, peak hours, between 4 and 5:30 p.m. or 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. A lot of these corridors are difficult to get through because of the congestion, because of the number of input. And so it's not to what extent can adaptive signaling change that, and how much of a problem do we have when it comes to induced demands. We try to accept it, as I assume that we want a alternative routes to not be on the arterial, like myself. I take basically the road that's one block down from 900, and I go all the way to the POC area, and I go on go, and I take a right over there. And you get the adaptive signaling, then I might end up starting with going, that's our 900 again, and then targeting again. And so my question is just like, to what extent can we ensure that suggestion, and then also the fact demand, like, are we sure that signaling can be good? That's my.
Yes, well, that's a really question, as well.
Yeah.
And Jordan was concerned about like on second, there's just a lot of people waiting there. That's not the arterial,
Right.
but it's for the so
Because they're going
it's the de facto arterial.
Yeah.
So again, is there an opportunity to shape that track? Really, it was really the question, would you?
I almost want to reframe this because there's a lot in the question, which, yeah, if we fix capacity or we add, if we make it so that we can have more through vehicles on the major streets, then it may pull things off the side streets, but it could also negatively impact people from the side streets trying to get onto that at the same time. So that is kind of the push and pull, but I want to try to figure out what is the goal overall. Is that like, we want to have, Victoria's point, less diverted traffic onto the side streets, the local streets, and we want to keep things on the arterials, if that's the goal, and we want to move that. But we also don't want to induce demand on major arterials. I feel like those are the things that I really need to hear as far as the priority goes. That's really threading the needle.
Let's go over your next. So this might be slightly off topic, but I don't know what a pedestrian scramble is. I don't know if I'm the only one here who doesn't know what that is.
It's a great question.
Do you want to handle it, John, or you want to?
Well, I will take an attempt and then if I, what I meant to pick up the pieces. So it is a signalized intersection where when the walk sign comes on for the pedestrians, then go any direction. And so if you're wanting to go north, you go north. If you're wanting to go west, you go west. And if you're wanting to go northeast, you go northeast. And so all the pedestrian movements happen all at once. So you usually see it where you have a lot of pedestrians. So if you're at the yes, a location with lots and lots of pedestrians.
Yeah, they Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Santa Monica Pier has a pedestrian scramble.
Take place.
Of the Rainier Trail, Gilman, they call the Three Trails Crossing. Yeah, right by schools,
Don't see them.
Caboose.
They got a real nice mural too.
I've been there, but I didn't know there was a pedestrian.
Yeah. And
You haven't been there since.
Yes.
yeah, and if you ever go to the Bellevue Transit Center, there's one there too. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And we were possibly discussing putting one of those in front of Sunset, and I think the pedestrian crossing there, I got to say, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, you always end up going either blend. It's not meant for all the.
Yeah.
Also pedestrian.
And then
Pedestrians are, it's in your weapon.
All right, let's go to the third.
Anyway,
we're looking for like specific priorities. I think based on the different road sections you showed, I guess in my mind, there's different priorities for different ones of those. Like Old Town is full of pedestrians, 900 does not support as many pedestrians. That's not a pedestrian thoroughfare as much. So my priority probably wouldn't be prioritizing pedestrians on 900, even though it is things like that. So I think it's like roadway dependent.
Yeah, you queued me up perfectly, because the next part of the conversation is to break down the corridor, and I would really kind of group them up so that they're somewhat similar in nature, but we can get into those very specifics. What we're gonna do is go through those groups, and I like to think of things in 3 buckets of what about that corridor do you want to protect? What would you like to create? So what is something new that you would like to see there? And then what do you want to avoid? What would be a bad outcome that you'd be like, boy, I wish we didn't do that in the future? So why don't we just go through, because the very,
More general comment.
okay,
On the pedestrian scramble and the
Yeah.
whole discussion of prioritization of pedestrian traffic. I think we talked about there's kind of a minimum for the amount of time that the crosswalk needs to be on. But we didn't talk about like the full cycle length. So how long we move forward to some. I think this is probably something that is like a general positive of adaptive signaling is you can, at times we don't have congestion, reduce the cycle length perhaps for cars. And that would be awesome.
okay,
In a number of intersections.
Plus one.
perfect. All right. So the first group that we were looking at, it's like, so we have, it's, okay, it's quite a big group. So we have the Sammamish, Northwest Sammamish Road at Southeast 56th, which is the loop that goes up and around sort of the Costco area there. And then East Lake Sammamish as well. So lots of big box retail off of those, lots of shopping through traffic on those as well. We also included Front Street in here, I think just the north side of Front Street. And then 17th or the SR 900 corridor, which is a much longer one. Now, the ones that I've kind of highlighted in yellow on the basically what's north of I-90, that is included in one of the plans that we were talking about earlier. And there's a little cross section in there. They're called like parkways. I showed the option here where there's transit on them. So on some of these parkways, there are transit, routes. So there's transit priority. And on those, the modal plan has already sort of identified that vehicles in transit are going to be the mode priorities for those major corridors. So with that, I just kind of want to, looking at the map of these corridors on the board, what do we want to protect, create? Well, we just start with one question at a time. How about what do we want to protect about those corridors?
Carlos.
I think this, I know we talked about prioritizing in less of frustrating and more rather regards as these are arterial, but on 4G East Lake Trail, where all the bikes and the runners are, I think that would be, I can imagine all three creative work, protecting their signal priority, because they're, I do notice, as someone who's ran and bike there before, or just ran, that's a very popular spot. And then they the old found avenues for lakes and action.
I think that crossing also has a history of accidents. So there's something that we would be looking for the improve pedestrian safety improved.
Especially with all the left turns.
Yeah, there's been some improvements to it, like this allowing left turns at times that they're not always followed. So I don't know. We'll be looking for solutions. Children.
Bouncing on that point, I think, having enabling people to, people who are biking or who are walking, or rolling on these trails. So East Lake Sammamish along the Sammamish Trail on the north side of the Sammamish Road, and then kind of the other trails on the west side of SR 900. Those trails, and then of course the crossing from East Lake Sammamish to Issaquah Crescent Trail. So trying to make sure that people are able to flow pretty clearly between, when they cross the roads and stuff. And so enabling that to happen. I know there's been times where I've had to be stuck at the crossing for Issaquah Crescent Trail quite a long time. So trying to tax the ability for pedestrians and bikers and rollers to go through that area. It's important to me.
I was just gonna try and put a positive spin on and say that there is a history of some, there was a fatality I don't know many years ago, but there have been improvements. And I think we want to protect those improvements. I do feel like it might not be particularly efficient to get through there non-motorized, but there is a facility, which is nice. And so making sure that we protect the predictability there and the separating at some of those major intersections where non-motorized and
Yeah, I think there are probably at least 3 major non-car intersections in this corridor. And so what we talked about earlier with prioritizing non-vehicle traffic at times when we don't have a lot of throughput in vehicle traffic. By reducing signal lengths, this would apply here.
I was actually just talking about the safety.
Yeah, I'm just.
Sorry, I guess I want to make sure that the safety efforts that have been made are protected.
Yeah.
I think that even if it's not prioritized for non-motorized efficiency, that's a trade-off we make. And I think we can't make any trade-offs in safety. And so just there's that, the signal that says that, you can't make a right turn, there's There's something, it's very specific.
Like snapshot of 56.
Yes, thank you.
Let's go into create. What would you like these corridors to be that they're not doing well today? Right away. I love it.
To like, for 17th and like getting onto I-90, just that backup if you're not HOV. Usually because people are going straight or right, does everybody know following where I'm talking about? Okay. So like helping you create less friction, on that entrance, and then getting off I-90 onto Front Street, just the folks that are trying to get over to continue onto Front. That big, that's really difficult. And then except everybody else who just wants to go right on Gilman. So searching. Okay, areas that create a room for.
Victoria.
In addition, getting off 90 onto 900, I sit at that light, right there by the PCC. Multiple light cycles every time, unless I go at a really, really, really dead time. Like that ramp is backed up all the way to the highway a lot of time. And I'm just sitting there, which is fine, but I imagine that is a bottleneck for people who need to go places other than Costco, like it's, yeah, I don't know, that light just never seems right to me. Get off there, I'm sitting on that ramp.
Can you say again?
It's when you're going eastbound on, no, westbound on 90, and you go to get off at 60 on 900. And whether you're going right or left from that exit, that whole exit backs up, especially because there comes a point where you can't separate into whether you're going right or left, and it's just one long line of cars. I don't know that I've ever sat at that cycle for less than like 2 go-throughs or whatever.
You go to Costco at 9 in the morning, it's not too bad.
I send my husband for executive hours now, yes. I've gotten hit on that, like by a car behind me on that one. I really particularly hate that off ramp, and the light seems a problem there.
Anyone else with things they want to create? Hopeful.
I think Julian mentioned this earlier, but this is the corridor that includes the Issaquah Transit Center, I believe, and creating more mobility for the buses to get in and out, especially during high traffic hours, because I know the bus has not been sitting in traffic there for freaking ever. When you're coming in going in or going out at a high throughput time. And I know that there's some things with smart, with the signaling improvement, like there's like prioritization for buses, that actually would help a lot with getting people in and out of the transit center. That's something.
Talking about when you're saying, you mentioned that by the transit center and with all the new developments are the potential migration years in the future if that happens. And that would be like the new signals upon maybe, I know this only shows these satellite areas, but maybe that would be part that's included as well for analysis signals, because that might be to consider things in the future. That might be a busy area. Maybe traffic volumes might increase. That be, or especially when we're thinking of pedestrians walk around.
I think at the very least preparing for making sure this infrastructure is compatible with that future is important.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of development that is getting over to that, and Trailhead is already the broken ground, or they break ground soon on that one, and it's going to be a lot more, at least local traffic that will be continuing to pass through traffic.
Yeah, and also I think, thinking about future developments, I feel like those, big box, those are eventually going to be redeveloped, sometime in the future. And so, thinking about how to, make sure that signaling that scenario many years since.
Great. And then anything on these to avoid, things we don't want.
I think Cindy's comments on like, make sure we have pedestrians.
The safety stuff, protected and avoided, yeah.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
I guess this is, I guess it's another situation to talk about, like, when it comes to the side streets, particularly when it comes to Costco area, and those, those roads flowing into Range Road, and thinking, we want to avoid making it smoother on the Sandwich Road at the expense of making her turn left or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know where I stand on that, but I think that's more of a question.
This was brought up before, but, we mentioned where like the entrance to the 90 at that road, SR 900, avoiding interest in that as well.
I'm sorry, Alice, can you restate that for me? I was trying to make a note of what you were saying and I got distracted.
Avoiding interest in that, especially with what you mentioned earlier with the 90 and SR 900.
And in general, we talked about kind of the backups that can form due to throughput bottlenecks. We want to add in new backups that prevent traffic flowing around town. It flows pretty well. Yeah, just because we fit them.
All right. Moving on to the next slide. It's a fun one. So this is the south end of Front Street and then east and west of Sunset. We've already heard the intersection of Front and Sunset is a concern.
No, this one's perfect. There's no problem.
Yeah.
Protect the operating edit.
Besides, traffic, when I'm thinking about protecting, this is a really huge area, where kids walk to school. Multiple schools, at multiple ages. And I would really like to facility for them at crosswalks, things like that. I know. On second, one because of food traffic, they just put in that flashing beacon on the school road. But so I'd like to protect, but yeah, just in general, thinking would protect large sidewalks for kids, groups of kids. It's a really big area where I see a lot of pedestrians, but particularly a lot of kids and some kids on e-scooters that maybe don't know road safety and things like that. And while they should be taught road safety, I just would hate to see any accidents. We had an accident at 6th and Sunset a couple years ago where an elderly man was hit. So things like that.
I would say, Front Street and this part of Front Street and Sunset Way is kind of like the most pedestrian section of Issaquah by far. And so I think the most important thing to protect for me is just the pedestrianization of that region. Like, we don't want anything that will make the area more hostile to pedestrians. Be that with harder to travel across the street or anything like that. And including safety, but I also just think the general convenience of pedestrians is something I want to protect here, and also improve. I think protecting it's pretty good, right? It's yeah.
I don't know if this is within the scope, but can they connect to intelligence?
Because really between exit 15, 17, and 18, a lot of people can get off at any one of those.
Mhm.
And it would be really, I mean, for getting real-time data that's feeding into the adapting, get real-time data so that the drivers can adapt. As
Do you
well.
want Google Maps?
No, I was thinking, I don't know if we would ever have signage, but like, wouldn't it be nice if I knew? Instead of arguing, yeah, that's not every time about whether it's better or not. 15, 17.
Like those 8 times?
Yeah, I mean, it was nice if there was some indication of which of those is the on, and then you can go the other way, because there's a lot of options for a lot of us in that whole grid. And I don't know if that's.
I mean, there's ITS system that can do that.
But can they work together?
Yeah, I think, that is it can. Making a system that can and coordinating with WashDOT to do that, it's definitely a challenge, but it's not
So it's kind of
impossible.
a pie in the sky.
I don't know that it's a pie in the sky. I did a project in Tacoma and that was our recommendation.
For a lot of, yeah, there's between the three interchange, the three exits. A lot of people have, an option.
Yeah.
Going to the plateau or whether you're going south. Or you can go any of those, and just if you knew that Newport was moving, but Front Street wasn't, you could get off at Newport. Or get off at 15, go to Newport.
So let's talk about supermarket checkouts for a second. All right, so, okay, say I have three supermarket checkouts and I have a queue behind each of them. Each of those queues is gonna move, at the speed of the checkout. If I have one queue that needs all three of those, that queue moves 3 times as fast, even though the throughput through the checkout is the same. There's a lot of that going on in these streets where you have everything feeding to the one lane going south for people that are going to Hobart or south of there. And so a lot of trouble in this particular corridor is people can't get around town when they're not going through the cross street south because there's so much traffic going from Front Street South. So I mentioned this earlier, but if there were a way to, turn it into kind of a one queue system where everybody's flowing, then you get flow of traffic around town, even though there's a lot of congestion. Same capacity of cars. This is pie in the sky, I have no idea how to do it.
That's okay, it's fine.
There's a lot of potential traffic shaping that has the impact of it's the same amount of capacity, it's the same amount of throughput, but on any particular road, traffic's moving a little bit faster, and so traffic that is not going through the bottleneck has a better experience.
So I want to dig in just a little bit on the Front Street backs up and it stops people from getting around other ways. So would the desire be to get people to use an alternative route to Front Street so that it doesn't back up as much onto other?
I would say to be specific, we've got the intersection at Front and Second, just south of the high school.
Yes.
At the bottom of the map there.
Yes.
We've got the intersection of Front and Sunset, with intersection of Newport and Sunset. And then Second and Sunset.
Mhm.
If you think of this as like 3 highway exits funneling through that,
Going south, yeah.
going down through that one lane. At the worst times, you get traffic back up and essentially stop. So like 3 lanes of it with less traffic going up.
Kind of the opposite of your example, right?
Each of them moves at a third of the throughput of the one lane, south of the Second and Front intersection.
Yeah.
So if there were an alternative that didn't have that following property, you might have a better experience for people that are not trying to
For people who are going east-west instead of trying to go south.
east-west around town.
Yeah.
Well, because one of the problems I think that what he's trying to say is that like, if I'm trying to go down like Front Street while you're in that traffic, but I'm just trying to get to like House on Tie down Front Street, but like, I'm not trying to go to a restaurant. I love that restaurant. Like, if I'm just trying to go to a restaurant along Front Street, it's completely impossible that time of day. So if you could just make it that the same amount of traffic moves a little bit faster, it would make it much easier for me to get, as an Issaquah resident, to get from my house to the Thai restaurant within town. So if there's any solutions that like can just make it so that the traffic flows through town, even if it's the same amount of traffic, that would make it easier to get to our destinations. And that's the main concern, people who live in the town.
Where it's fully stopped and you can.
Yeah, because the problem is traffic being stopped, not there being traffic.
Yeah.
Jordan?
Just thinking of things I wanna protect. That trailhead right there on Sunset and like any improvements they've done. The parking lot is not a big mess, but, the fact that it's there, the electric charging that are put there, things like that, I think that's part of what makes it really special is how many entrances you have to the mountain. This is a protect / create, tiny little 4-car parking lot by the high school trail, you know, that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Covered in mud.
Yeah, and like
6 months later.
occasionally you'll get a car that parks slanty, so you're kind of parked in, that I would like, protecting access, I guess, to the trail on this, because there are a couple like very well used ones, on these corridors.
That I'm picking up on multiple corridors.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes, the previous discussion was a lot about, who just matters of throughput, and I don't think that is even can do that stuff. And so, you know, I think the priority for this area is really to ensure that pedestrians are able to get around, bikers are able to get around pretty quickly. And protecting the Rainier Trail, protecting, you know, will eventually be an East Sunset bikeway or something of that sort of multi-use trail. And so trying to protect those kinds of modes, to the best possible is really important, in my view. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
it's out, the city line won't fix the issue of
that was
3 different traffic
definitely.
passages going.
You're not gonna like knock down huge developments to make different, like, that just is a funnel, point, it sucks, but it is. Yeah, so protecting, the ability of our moves or the safety of the interaction between pedestrians, the people on wheels, and the people in cars.
So a couple things related to, so if we talk about another corridors, transit. So going on Sunset, that's kind of a connection point between the Issaquah Transit Center, via Newport, comes to Sunset, goes up to the Highlands. So prioritization for transit. This is one place we've got that. And historically, we've had transit go on Broad Street as well. I don't know if there's current bus routes there.
271 goes on there.
And so bringing on 5
Yeah, so that's going to change over time, but I think there's a lot of transit route, bus routes to prioritize. And then the other thing we talked about was kind of people moving on non-arterials because they have to do that to protect their place in line, right? So even if they wanted to stay off of them, they're highly motivated to take a pass through, for example.
When you say people, you mean specifically cars?
Just teenagers. Yeah.
Teens going 40.
The speeding is another thing. Yeah, so Sunset, just south of Sunset is Andrews.
Yeah.
A lot of traffic on Andrews. It's just kind of cut the corner there, that kind of thing. If there's stuff we can do to disincentivize pass through traffic, cut through traffic, that kind of thing.
It used to be on Sunset and no left turn at certain times onto 6.
Never understood.
I never did that either, and it didn't really stop anyone. And then they put those speed bumps in, which just seems like a fun challenge to the high schoolers. But kind of with the buses, and I know the 554s go away and stuff, but so you're coming off 90 and you're going down Sunset. The number of people who want to make that left on Second backs up so much into a single lane that if you want to go straight, you have to wait for like 50 cars to make the left first. There's, a bunch of stuff there, so I don't know how much that could work out, but that seems to really impede people who aren't even trying to go that way like that. And I saw it on TIP or whatever, I think it's one part's a little like 1 year and one part's like 3 years or something, but that left turn going straight problem seems to be like a big bottleneck that doesn't, they're not all trying to live the same place, so it's, yeah, they get stuck there.
Something that that's to
So
work on.
something to create, figure that out. But that's an area where I'm like, oh, they're not even waiting to make a left, they just want to go straight and you can't, so. Similar to when we talked about people trying to go east-west as opposed to north-south, like if you were just trying to get over to like Squash Mountain or whatever, you can't because you gotta wait for everyone who wants to make a left on Second, and then you gotta wait for people who want to make a left on Front.
Right.
That's just a very one lane road. I don't know, but.
I think we're ready to go to the next group thing.
One more thing.
Okay.
On here, I asked a question by email, which was basically, as part of building this, we have a new opportunity to collect data. And so even if we're not doing, specifically adjustment schedules, we might find data that we've done student or interventions.
Yeah.
And so one of the examples of that would be school times. There's a lot of traffic when school lets out. Perhaps there's something we can do with the adaptive signaling there, like if we know there's going to be just a huge amount of traffic coming from the high school and the middle school at like the same time, adjust schedules for that. But even if we don't adjust the timing of the lights, having that as a data source that we can mine for opportunities to change schedules or whatever.
And I'll reiterate just for the rest of the time here that as part of this project, we are helping staff look at new data sources, big data sources that can help answer exactly some of those questions, because those are also some of the things that we need to know to understand if adaptive signals is even feasible. And then we're working with staff to make sure that that data can be used to better manage traffic flow overall. And I've heard this, I think, from multiple members that is just a concern, is making sure you have data that backs up travel management, like efforts overall.
Yeah, taking that one step further, a lot of the sources kind of are, many changes, perturb the system. You're just measuring it, how it is naturally.
Right.
If you allow for a perturbation in the system, that can allow for much more precise data science. So coupling that with the system, the traffic signal changes, it opens up other possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next is the Highlands 9th Avenue, sort of couplet up through the Highlands area. We have 2 more groups. We're good on time to keep going with space. All right. Start with protect.
So just 9, where's 9?
I think this is the purple corridor that's the southbound part of the couplet, and then there's the blue that goes north.
There's the Safeway gas station at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's around, yes.
I was thinking it was across the street. I mean.
All right.
Pedestrian priority, that is a lot of commercial area around about now.
I think the big thing here is, I guess the conflict again between wanting to go straight through to go to Kohani or to other parts of Sammamish. Versus, obviously the pedestrian, and trying to preserve the ability to do that across. But I'm not familiar with the Highlands area to make a strong determination as to protect, obviously I'm inclined to protect cross streets and particularly pedestrians, and so that's just my general bias, but I don't go to the Highlands enough to say which,
Let's see, Thomas, I noticed Erica has a hand up there. If you could help me watch for that,
Yeah, sounds great.
let's go to Erica.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm seeing some nods, I think. Sorry. My audio is a little funky. I can mostly hear you all. My curiosity is around guess that's the west end of that, if I'm looking at the map right. It gets further developed. I'm curious what sort of pedestrian, I guess both forms of traffic, but just folks walking from their houses to the Safeway or the other services in the area, coffee shops, etc. What that means for the pedestrian usage and signaling there. And then the other thing of note is the 550, well, the transit center, and then there's the 554 stop that's kind of around the hospital, which I know potentially like that's shifting or changing in the future. But I personally have not experienced rough traffic flow in this area, and I might just not be driving during the right times of the day to experience that compared to some of the other areas covered.
I have a similar experience, but it's not particularly congested.
Jordan, next.
I would agree. The few times I drive through there, it's not, the lights particularly coming back down, what is that, and I seem actually one of the more well-timed areas in spot. As a nurse and citizen, protecting access to the hospital, I'm usually very pedestrian above all of, but you, as that west side like that gets built up more, protecting the ability, because that road that you make a left on coming up Highlands and making a left to the hospital, that's kind of a narrow road right now. And so, but they're building a whole bunch more along there. Just in general, protecting access to the hospital, both for ambulances, people going for the emergency room, things like that. One of the rare times I think like cars do have to have really good access there.
Yeah, it's Discovery Drive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna echo similar comments and protect, because I do feel like it's one of the more less trafficked areas. And I feel like the lights are more in sync usually. But it could be a place where the technology could just further the improvements there. Especially if like you never be coming down to go to work or coming up to, come back home. And so there's certainly some possibilities to make it even better. But in general, I think it's the more better flow through area at this point.
And you want to protect that existing.
One of the things that comes up in some Issaquah strategy meetings is fire evacuation. And this is one of the areas that's it's kind of challenging. So as a protect and a create, don't make the fire evacuation worse, but also try to create a better way to get people out of there if there's a fire or an emergency.
Put down protect evacuation routes and create better evacuation routes.
You got it.
Right.
I'll note that I have seen traffic, which I think is related to the corridor we looked at previously, coming down Highlands Drive and going onto Sunset. That is something that we would want to potentially optimize here. And some of that traffic I didn't lose to the highway where it doesn't appear to be a throughput in this time, but throughput bottleneck. It was like it could flow freely there, but sometimes backs up behind traffic going.
One area I will say when you come down Highland, I've seen some dangerous maneuvers. If you're waiting because you're like, I gotta go straight down to Sunset, that on ramp to go east on 90 will occasionally get a little backed up, and then you have people just being like, oh, I'm going to go on this shoulder around them. I don't really know if there's any way to do that, but that's an issue. I will say, most cars are trying to go down Sunset, but if you get at rush hour, that turn on to 90, but it backs up that single lane going down to Sunset even more. There's just a lot of problems on Sunset with a single lane road.
So potential prioritization.
Yeah.
Left turn going on each side.
Yeah, something to make that easier so that you're not waiting behind them as well.
Okay.
So this isn't actually strictly related to this region, but it is related to somebody fire evacuation. That made me start thinking. So this system is a lot like the system that I was thinking here is a lot more complicated than the typical light system. I was just wondering how that affects like disaster preparedness and resiliency of the transit system. Because for example, like a couple of years ago when we had that huge windstorm, it knocked out the power in Issaquah for like a full week. And that meant that a lot of the traffic signals weren't working.
Yeah.
And that made it really hard to get around to town. It's like, yeah, when everything was already, the road with the freeze on the road and stuff, and then also the traffic signals weren't working. So what I'm wondering is, does this system make it harder to revamp the system after there's a big power outage? Does it not affect it at all? Because that is a concern in this region because we have gigantic power outages once every couple of years. Like, they're just gonna get worse.
I mean, it's a really good point. And I know my colleague, team member Jim, he talks about making sure staff are able to work with the system. So hard resets on the system, getting it back up and running can be a challenge. It can also help a lot because if it can sense that there's congestion somewhere that there normally wouldn't be and direct people a different way, maybe it could help. But I think that really comes down to making sure that you have staff to be able to get it going again. And doesn't really happen on its own.
Yeah.
Right.
I just
For
think
operation stuff.
putting in the priority is just like resiliency to natural disasters and stuff like that as a priority for the project in general, I think is important because we've just been experiencing a lot of that.
Yes. Putting that under my notes on this one, under create resiliency to natural disasters and then putting all four first.
I used to live in Montgomery County, Maryland, and they had adaptive signaling technology there that I didn't know existed until one day it wasn't working, and then we were backups everywhere.
Yes.
To your point, Mary, like sometimes when things aren't functioning, it can get worse because everybody got used to things working so much better.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to deal with that. The database world, people deliberately slow down databases to the worst performance just so it's evened out and predictable. I don't think we necessarily want to do that in this case.
So front and sunset everywhere.
Lower the expectations. That's really. Now, and Jim, if you want to come off mute and say anything here, but I'll speak the truth that you've taught me anyway. Having a kill switch and a backup plan is one of like Jim's go-to recommendation for any sort of adaptive system because it does, in a limited way, think for itself and sometimes does things you don't want it to. And people can suddenly freak out when it's like, oh my God, this is not what I'm used to. This is not my route been messed up. And you want to be able to undo it and go back to the normal operations and then try to fix it in the background without everyone sitting there screaming at you for a week.
Yeah, moreover, we're going to test the backups as well because
backup is what we have today is basically what it would go back to, right?
Well, presumably, maybe not.
Presumably, yeah, exactly. If you don't plan for that, then you maybe don't. Jim's on camera. I don't know if give me a thumbs up, Jim, if I did well.
Yeah, that's good. I don't have a lot to add. I mean, the power outage question, there's not a significant difference between having the adaptive capability and a regular signal system or more typical signal system when we're coming out of a power loss. That's going to be pretty similar. Chris pointed out the adaptive systems are more complex and they are dependent on good detection and communications. And so there can be an increased level of responsibility for the folks maintaining and operating these systems to keep them running. Like Bellevue staff somebody full-time who's monitoring and that their adaptive signal system. And so that's probably the bigger issue to me than a power loss and coming out of it, just the ongoing operations and maintenance need.
Anything else to add on Highlands ninth couplet? We have one more order to talk about. We've already talked about this one a little bit. I paused to see if there was okay. For Gilman, talked about it a little bit when we were talking about 900, I think, and some of the redevelopment that's planned around the future transit station and future light rail station. But so maybe we'll hear a lot about what we want to create, because this feels like it's a part of the city that's sort of about to transition, if not in transition. But let's start with protect. What's out there today?
Julian, yeah, I mean, I think this goes into both category developers, frame our bets and reference, protecting the ability for the cross street, crossings and then cross street going on to the arterial. Particularly when it comes to like the Maple to 900 section. Because I know in the city plans, there are plans to make more of a gridded pattern in the central split plan. And so there's gonna be more roads coming onto, more streets coming onto the Gilman. And then when you have the light rail station coming in online, you know, the 2040, 2045 timeline, you're gonna have more of that cross street, particularly with pedestrians and bikes. And so ensuring that it might be annoying to just stop at lights coming down Gilman after the Safeway area, but to that's a 900. But I think it is important to preserve that ability for people to come onto Gilman. That's it. So I think that's my bias for that.
Should be helpful.
Yeah, we already talked about pedestrian rollers, that kind of thing. Yeah, but the multimodal access that, like the trails crossing that during the Juniper, that would protect that multimodal focus. We had also talked earlier a little bit about Gilman and 17. There are a couple of trails that go through there. I don't see them used heavily, but it's so, to me, it's very intimidating not being a car in that area, just because so many ways to go through.
That one with the wooden bridge.
The wooden bridge.
I walk my dog in a long loop around there. You're physically protected from 900, but it's not an enjoyable experience to walk along there.
I feel like that bridge is best for biking.
Get out of there.
I think the bridge got destroyed by a storm recently. I saw.
Yeah, it's been a while and
Yeah.
we've been communicating with WashDOT the importance of getting it fixed.
There's like the road and the fall, they're all red. I just really like the trees along Gilman. I would be very sad if anything happened to that. Like I really enjoy the tree canopy that is there, considering it's an arterial.
Yeah, edible trail.
Yeah. I used to walk my kids up to Juniper to go to a lot of things. Would walk along Gilman. The trees there are really nice.
Talked about the good Eric and just saying, talk about the Highlands Drive moving pretty well. I think this is another area that generally is pretty well. So I don't have a lot of trouble like getting stuck in kind of anywhere in Gilman, getting onto Gilman from some of the edges of it that you got here on front or 17th back in the machine.
Does it move too well?
What does that mean?
Well, when I asked that specifically, I mean, you know, we're hearing side street access So I like to think of things as sort of a spectrum of access to mobility. Mobility meaning I'm going through, I'm not stopping. Access meaning I'm going across or from that corridor to things. So if a one is accessing the land use along Gilman, that's the priority. Mobility is I'm passing through, that's the priority. Where do you think Gilman falls on that, on like a 1 to 5?
I think it's a good balance.
You think it's good today?
I think it's balanced well. Cynthia was talking about that, how, from various perspectives at the British Rails Crossing at Juniper and Gilman, potentially there's some issues that could be improved. But as far as traffic in Issaquah, I don't think this is where the problems are. From many of those perspectives, that's just my opinion. We were going to Erica next.
Thank you. I was gonna pipe in and say, I'll largely echo Adam that this to me seems similar as the last corridor that we talked about, where I generally don't see too many traffic issues when I've driven along this, which tends to be more towards the evening. And one thing I would like to protect or preserve is the general flow in the intersection past the post office, where it connects to the roundabout and under I-90, which I know is maybe future plans there, or where light rail is sited can affect that. But right now I've had just really good auto traffic flow experiences there, but maybe I'm a one-off.
I would generally agree, but back to like your spectrum, I would say it probably flows too well in like the side streets suffer, or getting off of Gilman, whether you're getting on 900 or Front Street. Those are two bottleneck areas to either right or left of 900, I feel like, and those trying to get on to Gilman from 900. Yeah, I think straight you're doing probably too well, and there could be a better spectrum leaning a little bit more towards the side streets.
I think, right.
I was gonna echo what you guys have been saying, but also add just one other consideration. When you just said that three trails notwithstanding, it's actually not the Gilman part of that that's difficult. It's not when you're flowing through on Gilman. It's when you're on, would that be Juniper? And there's just so much constraint because you can't block the box there. And so
only 2 cars could be.
it's a mess when you're in that position trying to get on. So it kind of echoes this theme that seems to be developing, which you did a good job teasing out, which is that the getting on and off Gilman, and Gilman does move pretty well at the beginning. I think yeah. And so I just wanted to add that getting on and off of it at the Three Trails Crossing from the Juniper side is problematic. But flowing through there, even at the Three Trails Crossing, is not a problem. So that I don't perceive that as such.
Thanks. Back to Julian.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it means making Gilman perhaps less of a smooth flowing material and making it more fluid, in the sense of like, or more porous in terms of, getting one side to the other again, from getting on Gilman from Maple and then again into the Cedar. So like, I think in the future, especially when it comes to San Francisco plan, all of those movements will be much more serious, but much more volume. And so, particularly when it comes to non-motorized use, and so protecting that ability and also creating that ability is a big part.
Okay, Ali.
I was just saying, this goes back to your very first question when we started, which was like, what's your biggest pain point with signaling in Issaquah? And mine would be like trying to turn onto a main thoroughfare, like Gilman, for example, from the side streets. And more so from like, I'm usually like the light's just about to turn yellow or red, and I'm like, no, there's still like 2 more cars coming. Like, can you just let them? Like, I don't know if that's where this technology might benefit, being able to pick up, there's just like, let a couple more cars through. And then there's no one there, but I go down was that Maple a lot, where it's like a lot of censoring, which is just really great and timely, but it's also really quick, where it's like there's still more cars.
Sure.
My experience on Gilman is one of the few times, and like, not really, but sometimes I'm like, I wish there were more lights on this road. I really struggle to make I'm very risk averse in general, but I really struggle to make any unprotected left out of like, there's a lot of shopping and a lot of like medical center to come out of a lot, and traffic never seems to stop both ways ever. So I just started making a right going down the 900 to get on the highway and coming back down again. So forest is a good word, but like it's hard to. The lanes never stop at the same time. I can't make a left ever. I guess I just created my own roundabout way, but that's probably a little.
No, I'm sure Washtenaw loves to hear that you're going somewhere. Boy, the left.
Time. So that is a good point. Like the side streets, the intersections kind of flow well, but like anything without a light, it's a real struggle to.
We had a void on here. I feel like we've got some things to avoid, but if there's anything left that you wanted to add. And if there are any other general things that now that we've kind of gone through the corridor side by side and you wanted to talk about something. Boy, this came up with Festo 900 and didn't.
Just have a question about it in general. Is this, I'm gonna assume no, but it's like all or nothing, like you have to do this for like all the lights on a corridor because they are talking to each other in the video and stuff? Or like, would it, like if you only had one corridor, but like not some others, is that not taking full advantage of it? Cause they're not all talking to each other. I'm not a technology person. But how much in that, like how little or how much would you have to do?
You would need to do enough signals that are connected to each other to get a benefit of adaptive. That could be the entire, for example, Gilman corridor, or maybe half of the Gilman corridor. But I think right now there's not enough signals on Gilman to just do like.
No, not Gilman, but just.
But like, yeah, if we were thinking, you do need to get like to a point where there is enough return on it. But once you do that, you can expand. So there's not like you need to do that first map, do adaptive on all of the arterial corridors. And I think one of the things that Jim is actually helping me with too is doing what we're calling this corridor atlas to understand what's going on each of these corridors and then prioritize the improvements depending on where it could have the most benefit, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to talk about the next steps?
Yeah.
Back to you? Okay.
All right, well, thank you guys. That was a really good discussion. So just want to go through next steps for us. We plan to come back in April to discuss with you once we've absorbed all this information. We're going to get some existing conditions information, data collection. And then our goal in the next touch point with you really is to kind of finalize our performance metrics and our goals for the study that we move forward with. So we have a little more data, a little more information to go over with you in that meeting. And then we would take that in June to the mobility and infrastructure. For that, finalize our performance objectives and goals so that we can actually start the full study after that.
Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right, well, thanks a lot, I think this was great discussion. Hopefully you got a lot out of it.
I did, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll stick around until after the meeting, you can get that question.
Hopefully it wasn't too punchy. It could bring any solution.
It doesn't believe it.
Appreciate seeing all the creativity. So we'll move on to our next item of business, which is the board work plan. So the next item is to introduce and discuss the 2026 board work plan. Thomas Valdez, Senior Transportation Planner and Board Liaison. Took us to the first item. We'll come back and take us through the board work plan.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it. This should be a fairly quick conversation, but do just want to know if you support this proposed work plan as presented or if you have any questions or follow-ups I could answer, would love to answer that now. Do this every year, come to you in January, and then in March, we adopt it here. Between that, we also take this to council, so I'll be working with Erica and Adam just to go to a council meeting, talk about the proposed work plan, and just kind of get their feedback on it. So just very generally, there's some administrative things. So again, work plan, like I just talked about. Many of you will remember we did a parliamentary procedure training. We had Tisha come here. We did like an interactive activity that I thought was pretty fun. And then we do election of officers, and you'll recall we changed the board rules and procedures, so we're now doing a September election. So that's kind of shown here. And the more substantive things, we have a general work plan, so I can just kind of walk through all of these one by one. So the TIP, we touched on that today. Then in March, we'll come back with the draft. We'll really get into the weeds on that. There's the adaptive signal control, which was just mentioned, and then coming back in April. There's going to be a discussion next month on microtransit services. So talking about the overview of Metroflex service that we currently have, and discussing any potential performance targets, and looking at some service provider alternatives. Stacy is going to come back to talk about the ICAP. You'll recall we discussed this, I think it was October of last year. So coming back with a follow-up, I'm just kind of talking about those proposed updates. This year, there's going to be a lot of discussion on light rail. So tonight we'll have a little quick update on where we're at with that. But yeah, we're just going to come back. I guess the most, the biggest deliverable in our light rail study will be the evaluation criteria feedback. That's kind of like the nearest one. And then we'll sort of dig into some alternatives that we're thinking about. And we're kind of looking at Q2, Q3 for those discussions. The commute trip reduction program, we're going to be taking a look at that in September to November. Commute trip reduction is essentially for our larger employers in town with more than 100 employees. They're supposed to provide incentives to not drive themselves for the employees. So some people maybe in this room have like employer paid transit cards. That's part of that program. Sometimes there's free parking provided through your employer. Those are kind of like two ends of the spectrum of like things that are provided through a large employer. So we have a CTR program. It's per state law that we have one. City of Issaquah has over 100 employees. There's like 500 or 600, I'll say. It's something very large. But we are also under a commute trip reduction program within the city. So kind of meta on that. But September, November is when that will be discussed.
Quick question on it.
Yes.
Do high school students count as employees in high school? No, okay.
I think.
That's a little.
Yeah. So we do have some like part-time folks. I'm not sure that they're. I don't think part-timers get CTR benefits. Yeah.
Full-time employees.
See what you're saying. Okay.
The
Yeah.
school district has its own program for students and
Right.
trying to encourage carpooling and everything there. So we do work with them on that, but the CTR law through the state just focuses on employees.
Right.
And so far, the students aren't paid, but we'll see what the future holds.
Something I'm pretty excited about is talking about trail standards. So we'll give a brief introduction and then we'll discuss some proposed updates to city trail standards. Right now we have so many different trail standards and we're hoping to consolidate into a short list, maybe a handful. So more to come on that, but that's going to be an interesting topic. the mobility action plan that we, many of us have worked on, we're going to start having a report card. I'm hoping to bring that in October. It's just going to be like kind of a short list to kind of see how we're doing in achieving the mobility action plan, and that can lead to some other discussions on how we want to kind of move forward from that. We also have a traffic calming program in the mobility action plan. It calls for a biennial traffic calming program report, so that will come in November. We'll just kind of report out on over the last 2 years how the traffic calming program has done. So I can maybe go back to this larger list here. Just wanted to know if you had any questions. It looks like Erica has a question.
America.
Thanks. For the traffic calming program, is that like we're discussing our, like over the last year about, we've made the suggestions for really overhauling, you know, the original, I think like 2003 system is kind of what things were set to. Like, is that the flavor of that discussion?
An update on implementing the new policy that council adopted in November of 2024.
Okay, perfect.
Based on TAP's feedback, I should add. It's the policy.
Great, we have any other questions on work plan? Okay, let's move on then.
I'll just say next steps. Yeah, I will be working with Erica and Adam. We'll take this to council in March. So I'll just kind of coordinate with you offline, see which meeting works. But yeah, we'll bring this back to you guys.
We're going back to you because our next item of business is reports. Say we have a staff report.
I do, yeah. So there's, I would say maybe 4 topics we want to cover. First off, wanted to give a shout out to Jillian. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'm gonna do it in good order.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll circle back to that then. I'll just say that TAB is actively recruiting for new members. So in this next round, we will need 2 regular positions filled and 2 alternates. Applications are due February 15th, 11:59 p.m. So please do apply, and like if you're, I guess, Ali, your term is coming to an end, so you have a 1-year term. So we would encourage you to apply again if you're interested. And then any other folks that are interested, would love for you to like spread the knowledge that this exists. We are actively recruiting, but would love to like kind of make this as grassroots as possible. Yeah, I'll save discussion with Jillian after that. Last week, it was announced that the line 2 will be opening March 28th. That was very exciting. I was actually at the press conference in Seattle. It was very fun, good energy. So just wanted to, and in case you haven't heard, it's all over the news, but in case you haven't heard, that will be on March 28th. And then, yeah, I will kick it over to Andrea to provide an update on light rail planning in Issaquah.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Hi, everybody. If we haven't met, I'm Andrea Lenner. I'm the Deputy City Administrator and in charge of infrastructure and transportation for the city. And I wanted to run over some upcoming things just to make sure that you are aware and can weigh in. So on February 29th, we are having a special meeting with City Council covering transportation topics only. Among them is the Pavement Condition Index. So our streets operations manager will be talking about what is the condition of our streets. We regularly do an inventory and see, you know, for example, are there lots of cracks, potholes? What's the condition? Use that data to help us figure out our maintenance plans moving forward. As part of that presentation, there's going to be a discussion on pavement maintenance techniques. And so we have, for the past couple of years, been piloting some new techniques that we haven't done before to extend the life of the roadway. Things like crack seal, you're probably seeing more of that around town than you used to. Other types of seals. And so we've gotten some feedback from the public, not a ton, but some feedback on these different techniques. So we want to talk with council about those techniques moving forward. Can we continue to use those because some of these techniques are more cost effective than what we had traditionally done to extend the life of the roadway. So that's what the discussion with council will be on pavement on February 9th. We'll also have a discussion on MetroFlex. So this group, this advisory board many years ago really considered all of our options for MetroFlex, our microtransit program in the city. We had a 2-year pilot program for that. That 2-year pilot came to an end at the end of last year. Council decided to renew it for another 2 years and continue to help subsidize that service. But they wanted to have another conversation about what are those success markers. We have established goals for the program. We have metrics that we're using. But they raised a concern last fall about the cost per ride. And so while we're hitting some of our shared ride and SOV trip reduction goals, we're hitting some of our equity goals and making progress on lots of things. The cost per ride between King County Metro and the city together is about $40 per ride. And so, even though we're hitting all these other goals, the question is that a cost we want to bear? Are there ways to reduce that cost per ride? As part of that conversation, we have changed the service area. We worked with King County Metro to change the service area to try to pick up a few more riders. So MetroFlex, starting next month, will no longer serve a portion, the large majority of Squaw Mountain as it was, and instead we're adding on Issaquah Highlands up to Blakely Hall. And so we think that that will pick up more riders and change that cost per ride metric. In the meanwhile, we want to have a conversation, and our council wants to have a conversation about MetroFlex. What is that success marker? How do we prioritize among those goals that this group helped establish? And also look at, by way of facilitating that conversation, look at some options. So this advisory board looked at other options, including the possibility of going private and maybe doing a partnership with Uber or a similar service as Uber. Maybe there's other providers, for example, Circuit provides the bellhop in Bellevue. Are there other providers we can look at? So we're packaging all of that information for council consideration. Among the next steps that I'm proposing to council is just to get initial feedback on where they'd like us to head, and then come back to this advisory board to be able so that you guys can roll up your sleeves and really dig into this information and help provide the advice that you provide to council. So we're making a stop at council first just to see what kind of discussion they want to have for the rest of the year. And then I'm going to propose coming back to this board for more detailed discussion with you all. Then we have a discussion that council would like to have on the Transportation Benefit District. So as you may know, the Transportation Benefit District is a special sales tax district. We passed a 0.1% sales tax just for transportation spending only. So can't use that money to spend on anything else, just transportation. And we passed that a couple of years ago. So there were some things we talked about at the time on how we wanted to spend those funds. One was ITS projects, Intelligent Transportation Systems, some of the smart signal stuff that Marina talked about earlier today, plus many more things. We also talked about using some of that funding to help fund Pinch Point or Northwest Sammamish non-motorized improvements. And also in the fall, council decided to use some of those extra funds left over to help fund MetroFlex. And they also said, let's talk about this a little bit more strategically and figure out, is this really where we want to be spending those transportation benefit district funds now and in the future? Are there other ideas that we have? So that's really what that conversation is like. And that's going to help shape up some of our approach to the TIP that we are updating this year, as we update that every year. So we're going to use some of that guidance from council to look at how do we want to spend that funding moving forward. Mayor Millett also has a few proposals that we're going to go over with council. So those are some of the things coming up on February 9th. I also wanted to talk about Issaquah Light Rail and what we're doing right now with Sound Transit. So Issaquah is slated to have our own light rail station in 2044. Thomas, as I think you know, is working on a station alignment study right now to figure out where a best spot is for that future light rail station. So we've been doing a lot of the planning work to march towards that light rail station and prepare for it. There's one problem, as you know, Sound Transit is having significant budget woes and is trying to figure out how they can still implement ST3, but in a cost-effective way. One of the things that we're very concerned about is they may decide to not build an Issaquah light rail station. They may decide instead to cut all of it and put in BRT for Issaquah instead, or perhaps even do nothing. And so our stance is pretty bullish on this. We believe that light rail continues to be a high priority for Issaquah. We've been planning around it for a long time. Issaquah voted in favor for Sound Transit 3 back in 2016. Issaquahans have been paying these taxes and car tab fees for 10 years. We're going to be paying them for another 20 plus years for ST3. So we want to make good on that investment. And putting in BRT, that service looks very similar to what the 554 was pre-pandemic. 12-minute headways, a bus along I-90 corridor. Then we had a one-seat ride to Seattle. We're not going to have that in the future. So for Issaquahans to be taxed extra to receive what really is a reduction in service moving forward with the BRT is not something we're willing to accept. And again, Mayor Millett is providing a lot of leadership on this as well and feels very strongly. And so we are working very diligently, Thomas and I, and many others at the city, at trying to have a campaign to save Issaquah's light rail station. And in that, please mark your calendars. I'm going to put a hold on your calendars. We would love for you all to attend on February 24th. Let me get the time down. We would like to have a rally starting at 5:30. We think 5:30 to 6:30. A rally to save Issaquah light rail. And what we want to do is certainly invite all of you and all of our other partners and people interested and supporters of transit in Issaquah to rally together and learn more about where current status is with the light rail station and the light rail alignment from Bellevue to Issaquah, what the city is planning on doing about that. And we're going to be asking for some good old-fashioned grassroots support. So that means we want people to write letters and emails to the Sound Transit Board in support of transit and specifically our light rail station and maintaining that. We're also going to be asking folks to come down and attend the Sound Transit Board meetings and support light rail. We're looking at what kind of swag we can have so we can be visible to those Sound Transit Board members, providing public comment, all of that, because we're going to need everyone's support in order to keep this light rail station. We're also working with our employers. Mayor Millett has been going around to several of the bigger businesses in Issaquah, obviously including Costco, but also along the I-90 corridor just beyond our borders, because we have a lot of employees going to those major employers in Bellevue and a lot of jobs also in Issaquah that residents are coming from all over. So this light rail station is key for future job growth in the region. And so we're getting support from our major employers and property owners and developers for that. And so we need your help. And so what I'm asking from this group is any help that you can provide in, again, writing personal emails to the Sound Transit Board and helping show up and informing your neighbors. Thomas is going to be the keeper of our list of interested folks who want to help. So we can send kind of email blasts of, hey, there's a meeting next week. Can you show up? Can you help write emails? That kind of a thing. So we'd love if there's other people that should be on this list of interested folks, then please send those suggestions Thomas's way. We're going to be putting together that list certainly next week, but ongoing through this campaign. The rally on February 24th is to help galvanize some of this local support in Issaquah, including some other regional stakeholders like Transportation Choices Coalition and others. This is all gearing up for a board retreat that is happening in March, mid-March. It hasn't been scheduled yet. We don't know exactly when it's going to occur. We know it might be around mid-March. So that's kind of what we're gearing up for. And there's going to be another board retreat in June. So right now we're kind of you're going to see a lot more in the news and in local blogs and other places about our proposal and how we want to keep our light rail station and how we want to partner with Sound Transit in order to do that. But we really, really need a lot of the community to show up and support this and make sure that Sound Transit keeps their promises that they made to you all as voters in ST3. Any questions?
How much do we have in support of this message around cost effectiveness of building in Issaquah versus other places that, essentially we're competing for dollars that are limited?
We are.
We have a lot.
We are.
To support our.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, what was originally in the ST3 package was what's called the Ski Link, South Kirkland to Issaquah light rail. It's unclear at this point how committed Kirkland is to their segment of the line. And so it's possible that Kirkland is very happy with bus rapid transit and maybe is willing to just let their light rail line go. That's kind of early indicators what we've heard from Kirkland so far. And if that's the case, then maybe that frees up some dollars for Issaquah. The other thing that you should be aware of and that we're talking with many regionally about is the principle of sub-area equity, which is governs Sound Transit's investments and something that's up for discussion for them. Sub-area equity basically is that where we collect tax dollars from to fund Sound Transit will also receive benefits of their tax dollars. So at this point, they have to make investments in the east side because they've been taxing us for years. But what those investments are is up for debate. So again, they may feel like, well, maybe BRT satisfies that sub-area equity policy. We would maintain it does not. And so what we're trying to do is take a different approach from, let's say, Seattle. Seattle has been saying we need more, and trying to get more and more of Sound Transit's dollars. Well, Issaquah is saying we want to partner with you and reduce your costs and make this easier. And so we want to be able to help Sound Transit have a really easy win here to make it appealing and help keep their promises to voters, where Seattle is just wanting to take more and more, essentially. So we think we have a different approach that's going to be appealing to the Sound Transit Board. And so that's how we're hoping to maintain a competitive edge. But we do need to make some noise in Issaquah to make sure they're aware that we want this. And we're going to hold them accountable to the promises they made to us.
I think you can go ahead and share the comments. That would be very helpful.
Love that. We are working on that. So we're putting together some email templates for folks to kind of choose from to be able to send out. And you can, it's a starting point. You can send it as is, or you can doctor it up and make it more of your own. And we'll be coming out with much more specific messaging. But right now we're gearing up and we want to make a big splash.
Is that, Thomas, do we have any more staff report?
I don't, but I know that Julian wanted to mention something that I was going to, so I'd love to have him have this time.
What? If you want to share a report, yeah, quick. I just have a quick shout out for the Issaquah Climate Action Plan and the Metrics Committee that is meeting starting next week. So we're Stacy came and talked to us at our last meeting, which was eons ago. Part of what we discussed with her was, shifting things from implement the transportation plan to do some advocacy of climate metrics and that. So we're getting that stuff kicked off. I guess stations get to talk to us next month. So a couple of that as well. I think that's all I have for the chair's report. Erica, you're on. You're the actual chair. Anything to add?
Thank you, acting chair. Thank you for having grace with me showing up very late. I was experiencing the very thing that we discussed. I was in gridlock traffic on a highway. Nothing to report from me, other than I'm here in Olympia for the next couple of months. I think you'll see me teams in next month, but then I should be back by March. So, yeah, hearing the other end of Sound Transit's budget woes, wearing my other hat a little bit. So
Great. So that'll conclude the chair report. Julian,
Yeah,
you have the floor.
well, I mean, I'm glad that I get to ride the Sound Transit line. I'm glad about that. But I'm kind of bummed that I don't get to have the nice discussions according to the work plan later in the year. I will be doing another term here in town, or going for another term. That's because I am moving to the Netherlands in August for a master's program in public policy. And so I'm going to Maastricht University, which is kind of in the southeast corner, that notch of Netherlands between Belgium and Germany. And so I'll be spending a year there, and probably hopefully much longer than a year as well. And so really excited for all the biking that I get to do there, and the trains and all the other public transportation infrastructure in the Netherlands and Germany and Belgium, everywhere else. So really, really looking forward to that. But it's been a really wonderful 4 years on tab, and so and informed why I went to public policy. So that's for sure. But yeah, it's been an amazing 4 years.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity. I clearly need to invest more in multimodal so that we can compete with the challenge that you think pretty well at when you do that. Just looking for incorporating your learnings from the experience after that.
Yeah, no, hoping to stay longer term in Europe. So at least for the last few years. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Any other announcements? No business. Hallie.
I hope it's okay. But I'm pretty sure I have a ballot, and they're due February 10th. It's a school district rule levy. So please be sure to vote. So shameless plug.
Thanks. Any other announcements? Hearing none, I will pronounce the meeting adjourned at 8:11 p.m. Thanks everybody for staying late, but I think it was great discussion. So, welcome.
You bring in Chris back up. Thank you.
Great, your character.